So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 highest damage builds in Albion Online. So for each and every single build I will show you what abilities and armor you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and demonstrate you the best skill rotations that you want to use. And then lastly I will show you the best gameplay so you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. So no matter how much silver you have, or how high or low your weapon masteries are, you can easily use these builds and follow the step-by-step guide. So, if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first build, which is the light crossbow, and we chose this weapon because it's high damage over time. The gameplay itself will be very simple and you will not have to worry much about stacks. And unlike the other crossbows, the one-handed crossbow will give you a wide versatility for PvP and PvE. So if you are looking for one of the highest damage builds in Albion Online for all type of content, then this is the one for you. So then moving over to the build itself, and for the weapon we want to go with the light crossbow. Then for your Q spell you want to pick the second option, then for your W pick the second option as well, and then lastly for your passive go with the well prepared, which is the second option. Then for your offhand you want to get the creep candle, then for the helmet you want to use the assassin's hood and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the chest armor go with the cultist robe and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the boots go with the royal sandals and choose the third ability and second passive. Then for your cape you want to pick the Thetford cape, and then lastly for your consumables you want to go with the poison potions and beef stew. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build and how to get the best results possible. So for the first Q spell we have the explosive bolt, which will fire an explosive shot dealing bunch of damage to the enemies in 3-meter range. So you just simply press the Q button and whenever your mouse cursor is that direction, the shot will be fired. Then the second skill, which is the W, is called the Southern Shot, which will shoot a debuff arrow that decreases the enemy's resistance, and you can only shoot this ability by locking on the enemy. Then for the third skill, which is the E button, we have a skill called the Exploding Shot, and this will shoot a sticky bomb dealing bunch of damage at the start, and then after 2 seconds the real explosion will happen and deal even more damage. And again you can lock on the target so you can't miss the skill, and the explosion will do damage in 5-meter radius, so you can use it to AoE farm mobs. Then moving over to the R skill, which is called the Cultist Robe, and this ability will make your character regenerate health and energy, while at the same time giving you damage resistance. Then the next skill is called the Meditation, and this will increase your cooldown rate by 80% while channeling the ability. And then lastly for your F ability we have the Defenseless Rush, and when activating the skill it will increase your movement speed by 75% and increase your damage by 15%. The only downside for this ability is that when you activate it, your defenses are lowered by 13%. So usually we won't use this ability when we are about to deal a bunch of damage. And then not to forget about our consumables and cape passive. So for our Thetford cape we will do a bunch of damage every 15 seconds when we auto attack the enemy. So don't forget to keep on using auto attacks when the rest of your abilities are on cooldown. Or just remember to keep on watching this cooldown on the top left corner of your character icon. Then for the fame farming and general PvE we use poison potions. So if you don't have that much silver, use poison potions only for bosses, or if you have a lot of silver then use them as much as possible. And then last but not the least, keep on using your food every 30 minutes, which again is located in the top left corner of your screen. So with all of this said, let's move over to the rotation. And PvE and PvP basically work the same way for this build. In PvP you may only want to save your potions and chest armor ability, which is the R skill, but for PvE I recommend to use it as often as possible. So then for your rotation at the beginning of the fight you want to activate the F ability, then use the W skill, and then use the E ability. Then from here we activate our D ability, then when that is done channeling we use again the W and E, and in the meanwhile while most of our skills are on cooldown we use auto attacks and the Q skill as much as possible. And then lastly, if we ever get low health or need some defenses, then we use our R ability. So let's see what we did in this rotation. But first of all, using the F ability we give ourselves 15% damage increase, and then we use the W plus E combo because the W will do damage and lower the resistance of enemy. So then by using the E ability right after we will increase our damage even more and do very high DPS numbers. Then after that is done, by then using the D skill we will channel it, and every second it will lower our cooldowns by a lot. So then very quickly we'll be able to do the W plus E combo again, and then lastly, while our main skills are on cooldown, we use the Q and auto attacks as much as possible for just extra damage, and that's about it. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for a top tier player build that will do very high damage and you can use it for solo or group PvP and PvE, then this is the one for you, so have fun. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the one-hand dagger. And if we take a look at the pure damage numbers, then this weapon from all daggers does the highest DPS. But unlike the first build, you have to be more careful when playing this one. And instead of doing damage over time, you will do quick damage in few seconds. So again, if you're looking for one of the highest damage builds in the entire game, then this is the one for you. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapon, we want to go with the dagger. So for your Q, you pick the second option, then for your W, pick the last fifth option. And then lastly, for your passive, go with the deep cuts, which is the first option. Then for your offhand, you want to go with the torch. Then for the helmet, you want to use the royal helmet and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the chest armor, go with the hunter's jacket and pick the third ability and first passive. Then for the boots, go with the royal sandals and choose the third ability and second passive. Then for your cape, you pick the Tetford cape. And then lastly, for your consumables, you want to go with the poison potions and dead water eel stew. But then for the alternatives, specifically for PvP, I would recommend to switch the cape for Bridgewatch cape, and then lastly on your dagger only for PvP, you want to go with the fourth W. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build and how to get out of your abilities the best possible results. So for the first Q ability, we have the Deadly Swipe, and this skill will make your character do a small jump that will deal damage in 3-meter radius, and each time you hit an enemy, your spirit charge will increase your damage by 6%. So then for the second ability, we have the Chain Slash, and this skill you can only lock on a target or object like traps or chests in dungeons, and this skill makes your character dash into the target while dealing damage, and the best thing is that you can dash up to 4 times. So if you see 4 enemies close to you, you can dash 4 times, and each time you will do increased damage and be immune to all enemy attacks while dashing in the animation. Then for the E ability, we have the Bloodthirsty Blade, and when you activate the skill, it will give you increased damage, increased movement speed, and each time you hit the enemy, you will regain a portion of their health, but at the same time you get a debuff, and even if you're not doing damage, your health will go down. So then in the next gameplay part, I will show you the best skill rotation and how to overcome this debuff. So then for the R skill, we have the Haste ability, and when activating, it will give you haste, which means that you will get increased attack speed by 60%, and all damage you will do will be increased for 20% as well. Then the next skill is called the Ballista Support Fire, and this is a simple crowd control that on your targeted area will shoot this barrel, and if you hit the enemy, he will get stunned for 3.5 seconds. And then lastly, for your F ability, we have the Defenseless Rush, and when you activate the skill, it will increase your movement speed by 75% and increase your damage by 15%. The only downside is that while this ability is active, your defenses are lowered by 13%, so usually we want to use this ability when we are about to deal bunch of damage. And then from our Tetford cape, we will do bunch of damage every 15 seconds when we auto attack the enemy. And as our build is basically built around auto attacks, so you don't have to worry about this one because it will be working in the background. And then last but not the least, keep on using your food every 30 minutes. So for group PvP and PvE, I recommend the Deadwater Eel Stew, but if you're solo and still even with the lifesteal, if you run into health problems, then use the cabbage soup. So with all this said, let's move over to the rotation, and PvP and PvE basically work the same way. So then for the rotation, at the beginning of the fight, you want to activate the F ability, then use the D skill on the enemy, and then right after activate the R ability, and then the E skill, and then from here we just keep on being on top of the enemy while spamming auto attacks. And then when your main DPS skills are on cooldown, keep on using the Q and W as much as possible, as this build is basically focused around doing very high damage for 5 to 10 seconds and then waiting for about 15 seconds. In PvE, in the skill downtime, you can just escape the enemy attacks and keep on using the rest of your skills. But for PvP, usually dagger players use their one-shot combo and then run around while getting their rotation back up, and then you repeat the same process. So let's see what we did in this rotation. But first, while using the F ability, we give ourselves 15% damage increase. Then we use the D skill, which will stun the enemy. Then we activate the R ability, which will give us attack speed and increased damage. Then right after, we use the E ability, which will give us lifesteal and movement speed. So then these 4 skills in this exact order is our main highest damage rotation, and if you use it properly, you'll be able to eliminate players and mobs in just few seconds, and that's about it. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for one of the highest damage builds that, unlike the first build, has the short high DPS windows and has super fun playstyle, then for sure try this one out and don't forget to have fun. So then taking a closer look at the last and final build, which is the one-hand frost staff. I personally have been playing this weapon for years now, and it is my most favorite one because of its playstyle, the ability to be a real mage with teleport ability and a huge outplay potential. And of course, like any of my builds, this setup is amazing for PvP and PvE. So if you're looking for one of the highest damage builds, then this is the one for you. So then moving over to the build, and for the weapons, we want to go with the frost staff. So for your Q, you pick the third option, then for your W, pick the second option, and then lastly for your passive, go with the aggressive caster, which is the third option. Then for your offhand, you want to go with the Tome of Spells, then for the helmet, you want to use the Royal Cowl, and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the chest armor, go with the Scholar's Robe, and pick the third ability and second passive. Then for the boots, go with the Royal Sandals, and choose the third ability and third passive. Then for your cape, you pick the Morgana cape, and then lastly for your consumables, you want to go with the Poison Potions and Amulet. But then for the alternatives, specifically for PvP, if you don't like the Royal Sandals, then go with the Cleric Sandals and pick the third ability and third passive. And then for your potions, switch from Poison Potions to Resistance Potions. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So for the first Q ability, we have the Ice Shard, which drops this circle-shaped ice that explodes, dealing bunch of damage. Then the second W skill is called the Frost Nova, and this ability teleports you, and if you're right on the enemy while teleporting, then you will stun the enemy and do a bit of damage. Then for the E skill we have the Freezing Wind, and this will shoot these ice shards in front of you, dealing damage to the enemy, and at the same time freezing them in place for a second or two. Then for the R skill we have the Speed Caster, and when we activate it, we will receive 50% cast time reduction, and all of our skills will cost 75% less energy. Then for the D skill we have the Perpetual Energy, and when using this ability it will give us energy cost reduction to 0, so after activating, in the next 15 seconds you can use as many skills as possible, and all of them will cost 0 energy, aka mana. And then lastly for the F ability we have the Defenseless Rush, which gives us increased movement speed by 75% and increased damage by 15%. Then as far as your cape goes, it will give us a passive that when you use your E ability, it will automatically activate this cape, which will give us an additional 50% cast time reduction. So with all this said, let's move over to the rotation, and for PvP and PvE, it basically works the same way. So then for your rotation at the beginning of the fight, you want to activate the F ability, then activate the D skill, and then use the E ability. And then from here we just spam the Q button as much as possible. Then when you see that your speed slows down, activate the R ability again and just keep on spamming your Q button. Then when our abilities get on cooldown in the meanwhile, we keep on using the W and Q spell, and then when our main skills are back up, we repeat the same rotation. So let's see what we did in this rotation. But first of all, using the F ability, we give ourselves plus 15% damage increase. Then we use the D skill, which makes all of our abilities cost 0 energy, and then we use the E skill that activates our cape, and we spam our Q button for very quick and easy damage. Then when that slows down, it means that our cape effect ends. We activate the R skill, which is the second speed boost, so we spam the Q ability again, and that's about it. The main strength lies in how much Q abilities you can use, and as we have a lot of energy reductions, teleport and a huge AoE spell that we basically can spam 24/7, we have everything we need for any type of content. So in my final conclusions, if you're looking for, in my opinion, the most fun and highest damage build in Albion Online, then for sure check this one out, and I hope you have fun. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Albion Online builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you wouldn't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day, and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.
Yo, I ain't here